Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, good evening. So I sent the agenda out. I hope everybody got a copy. There were no requests from anyone about adding things to the agenda. So I put this together, but as we go along, as always, feel free to jump in if you have a question or, you need more information or, anything. So feel free. So just to give you an update on department activities, as we always start with our staffing. So we're down 3 officers. So we're in the process of a selection process. We haven't been too successful. It's been going on probably for the last 6 months. One of the openings is actually over a year old. It's a sergeant that retired over a year ago, and we just haven't been able to replace it. So we've been involved in an ongoing process of trying to hire. I mean, the only way I can describe it is it's dismal. It really is. We've interviewed a number of candidates. I can tell you there were 6 candidates that we interviewed that were actually police officers from other police departments that were certified, and I didn't take them. But we did get lucky. We had a final interview today with a gentleman, very interesting background, is currently an EMT in New York City, is also a personal trainer in the city. He works 2 jobs, and he's a US citizen, but he's actually from Brazil. He was born in the United States. When he was 3 years old, his mom is Brazilian, and when he was 3 years old, they moved to Brazil. And he spent his formative years in Brazil, graduated high school, graduated college, came back to the US, is working, like I said, in the city as an EMT, and speaks 3 languages, obviously English, but in Brazil, they speak Portuguese. So he's fluent in Portuguese. He's also fluent in Spanish. So he's bilingual. So, I mean, great background, great kid, wants to serve. And it was interesting because I kind of hit it off with him. About 20 years ago, my wife and I, we hosted an exchange student from Brazil. She actually lived at our home for a year, went to Newington High School and graduated from Newington High School. And she lives in Fortaleza, Brazil, which is on the northern part of Brazil, on the coast. So just, talking to him and going back to when we had Bianca, our exchange student, it was interesting because I had an understanding of the culture in talking to him. So it was nice. But I think he's going to be a great asset to the department. He wants to move into the area or into the community, very service-minded. So he'll be starting around the first week of April. The academy starts April 23rd. It's a satellite academy. It's actually at the Britain Police Department. So he'll be going there. So that leaves us with 2 more openings that we're trying to fill, and as I said, or always said, that I'm going to hold out for the best. We're not going to sacrifice our standards. I'd rather go with a vacancy than hiring somebody that I don't think is going to be a good fit for the department. So, but this guy, he's the ideal candidate, and we kind of had to rush a little bit because everybody was after him. It's just like you get a really good candidate and everybody's fighting for him. So, we made a rush to the finish line and we were able to grab him. And so I think it's going to work out real well for us. So I was happy to give you that information tonight because it's just been so challenging.
Chief, are we the only ones that are struggling with finding people, or is it all departments?
Everybody is.
Yeah.
Everybody's struggling. And what happens, Paul, like I said, is when you find somebody good, everybody's after them. And, it's kind of like a race to get through it first. And, if you're the ideal candidate, you can pick and choose where you want to go. And people are looking at, the benefit package, the salary, the reputation of the department. Those are all factors that come into play. for these strong candidates, and they're picking and choosing where they want to go, based upon what the department has to offer. So we sell the department. It's a good place to work. Newington's a great town to grow up in, to live in, with the services, park and rec, sports, education. And you're not going to find a better town that gives you services. I mean, I come by my house 4 times picking up leaves. You're not going to find it in any other community. So, I mean, it's not just the police department, it's the town, especially if you're young, and he's young, he's looking to start a family. So it's kind of like the ideal place, so it worked out good.
Chief, what is the to follow up on Paul's question, what is the pipeline that you pull from, or like a feeder system of getting somebody interested in police work to then like take the next steps?
Yeah, I mean, it's really tight. It's getting out. Like I'll give you my history. I grew up in town, and I played midget football, and our midget football players, or our midget football coaches, were Newington police officers, and that's how I got interested. And then Newington was on the cutting edge. When I was in high school, they didn't call him school resource officer, but there was an officer that was assigned to Newington High School back in the 70s and in the early 80s when I was there. So, you saw that, you looked up to him, and, that was kind of what got me interested in police work. And frankly, that's, along with my family, that's where I am today, is a lot has to do with that. So, I mean, you try to do the same thing. We put a billboard up, the electronic billboard on Route 9. We did the recruiting. I just put an ad in. I got it back today with the National Minority Update. It's an advertising or a resource tool, recruiting tool that goes throughout the minority population. I post things in there. You know what the bottom line is today is it's the officers. We as officers have a duty and responsibility to get out there and try to recruit people that are interested in police work and try to sell them the police department, because the pool of applicants just isn't there. And when I got hired, there were over 500 people that took the written test, and there were just 3 openings for Newington when I took the written. So you had 500 people, and now you're lucky if you get 50. So, and then, a lot of people that take the test aren't just well qualified to do the job. And, you have a small group that, like I said, everybody's fighting for. So it's just, there's no interest in the job anymore. And, I think it's the same. My wife's, she's in the school system, and they're struggling to find people. They're struggling to find speech and language, related services, OT, PT, so much so where they're going to a temp agency to fill those positions. So it's almost like, police work, but it's almost like public service is there's not a lot of interest there. So I think it affects everybody. So I think we just got to do a better job at trying to sell the job. And, I'll be upfront and honest with you. I think, what's gone on across the country over the last year is pushing people away, when we got to find a way to attract people. They talk about in Connecticut about, community colleges. Well, why don't we find some kids that are really interested in criminal justice, and pay for their associate's degree at one of the community colleges. I mean, find kids that are really interested in serving the public, being police officers. And when you find them, pay for their college, pay for a 2-year degree, so we can, reap the benefits from that. And I think we got to do a better job, try to attract people into the profession, because, if we don't, we're going to have people leave, and we're just not going to be able to fill those vacancies. And, I told some people this, and I really believe this. If we don't turn this around, 15 years down the road, the Newington Police Department may not exist anymore. We may have to consolidate into a metropolitan police department or a Harford County Police Department. You know, we just can't replace the people that are leaving. And I can assure you this, that if that happens, number one, the people in town lose control of the police department, and you're not going to get anywhere close to the services that you get right now. It's just not going to happen. So, I mean, we got to try to turn things around and try to get people attracted into the profession. It's a noble profession. It's challenging. It's difficult. But when you find the right people who are doing it for the right reasons, you know, it just makes the community better. But we're just not getting the applicants. They're not there. And, you know, I have 3, you know, I filled 1, but now I have 2 that I'm still trying to fill. And I got 2 in the pipeline that are probably going to be leaving within the next several months. So that's going to bring me up to 4. And then when you don't have the staffing, then you cut back on your services in a sense where you fold into your core responsibilities. That's patrol, that's investigations, and, you know, sacrifice community outreach because you just don't have the people to be able to perform those functions. You got to go back to, you know, your core responsibilities when you don't have that staffing. So that affects the services that are being provided, not to mention the fact that, you know, when we don't have the staffing, we're filling positions on overtime, and that's, you know, an increased cost to the department and ultimately to the taxpayers. So we just got to try to find a way to get people attracted to the position. I mean, we've done youth academies in the past to try to get people interested, things of that nature. So you know, the other thing too, I'm sorry, go ahead, Todd.
Oh, I was just going to ask too, does the department itself have to do its own recruiting? Like, so the Newington Police Department has to do its own recruiting, or it's not like people go through or you have to find people who are interested to go to academy, and then from academy they interview with different departments, or is it like,
Yeah, so
literally
here's
you have
how,
to find?
yeah, we do our own recruiting.
Okay.
And then what happens is we hire, and then we send the person to the police academy. So they're there for 6 months at the academy. And then upon a graduation, there's a 16-week field training program where they're in a car with a veteran officer, basically, you know, on the job training. And then after the 16 weeks, you know, they're on their own, and then they're on a year's probation. So.
Okay. All right. That helps me understand it better. I always had this vision of like somebody would like come out of college, or if somebody did it out of high school, like go to the academy, and then the academy would like sprinkle whoever comes out, give them opportunities at different locations.
Yeah,
So
no, you're hired, and then you go to the academy.
got it.
And what's frustrating too,
Okay.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Ashley.
Oh, I was going to say, I was envisioning it kind of like Todd, like, so I graduated from the School of Education, and then we had a career fair, and then it was like different towns went to their career fair. So I was kind of envisioning that. But my husband is a teacher in Windsor, and they have some sort of like a youth, it's like connected to the police department, I think. And it's like a club, and there's a whole bunch of kids in high school that do different sorts of activities and have meetings. I can ask him a little bit more about it. I just vaguely remember it because we went to a fair once, and I saw like a big tent, and he had some students there.
Yeah.
But does the police department have any sort of connection like that with the high school?
No, what we do is we do job fairs. We have the SRO. I think what you're talking about, they used to be police athletic leagues, and they transitioned now to police activity clubs or activity leagues, something along those lines. And again, you got to have the staffing to be able to do that. We've gotten some grants in the past where we've worked with the school and the SRO identifying kids at risk. And we've had activities. There was one, actually, when I was a lieutenant, it's kind of dated. We worked with the SRO. We identified kids that were at risk. We met with them on a weekly basis just to get to know the different activities, and then ended the session with a trip to Fenway Park to watch a baseball game. So it worked out well, but that was all through grant money through the state. So those are types of activities we could look at doing. But again, we got to have the staffing to be able to do that. We're down right now. The CSO is basically covering now. She isn't out there doing what she normally does, but she's covering. So again, when you have that reduced staffing, you just don't have the ability to perform those functions. On a happier note, we still plan on going forward with National Night Out in August. We'll kind of take our lead from Park and Rec, with the extravaganza. That's the third week, the third Saturday of July. So we're hoping by then things will be in a better situation. So we're hoping that we could do the National Night Out. We'll be obviously looking to you guys to give us a hand. So we're hopeful by then. Not that things will be back to normal. It's interesting. I saw something on TV the other day, and they were talking about, when we get back to normal. And then, there was a woman that had talked and said, it may be normal for you, but it's not normal for me because I lost my husband. So, we're looking to get back to normal, but there's a lot of people out there that are never going to be back to normal because of the loss. So we just got to keep in mind.
Hey, Chief Clark,
What's up?
Counselor Minor has his hand up.
Okay, sure. Yep. Hey, Chris.
How are you, Chief?
I'm good.
Just wanted to touch base with you a little bit. You were heading for it before, and I just wanted to kind of circle back. Has the town ever considered doing an Explorer program? I know when I grew up in the 80s, I was part of Weathersfield's initial program when they took it off the ground. And I know that of my group, there were about 3 or 4 out of about 15 that did go on to law enforcement. And I just was curious to see if that was something that you would consider or would consider. I know the fire department about 3 years ago was down to about 3 or 4 cadets and almost considering closing the program, but with some new, younger, talent that was interested in it to get the group going, that has now grown to about 30 cadets that I know we've got 2 that are actually going into career fire departments. And I just was curious to see what your thoughts were on it.
Yeah, I actually, one of those Explorers is a police officer here, and we hired him. So yeah, it's when I was in Vernon, we had an Explorer post in Vernon, and we had like 3 officers assigned to it. And again, it takes staffing. It's part of I believe it's part of the Boy Scouts. So
I think it was somehow spun off of that, but I know that, my personal experience with it is, we were able to attend the regional academy that was very similar to a lot of the training that, the cadets and the probationary officers go through. And then we also were able to attend a national academy out in Seattle, Washington.
right.
Yeah. A lot more in depth. And through that, I think what we're at least finding in the fire department, and we've actually got some other towns are coming to us saying, what are you doing and how are you doing it, is to get them young where they're still deciding what they want to do. And, there is a lot of negative rhetoric to the profession, but I think there's still a lot of noble, still is a very noble profession. And I don't see that changing any. It's just a matter of getting them young enough. And I think you hit the nail on the head, maybe in terms of offering some assistance with an associates to go after either forensic or, somewhere within law enforcement to try to encourage that. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, it's something we've looked at, myself, Jamie DeSimone, and I forget who else. A couple years ago, they had what you described as one of those roundups where they have a bunch of Explorer posts. It was actually at the University of Hartford.
Yep.
So we went there and took a look at it. Again, it's a lot of work, and it's having the staffing available to be able to do that. And I mean, it's not something that I wouldn't mind having to use that. You know, like I said, we had it in Vernon. I was there for 8.5 years. And in the 8.5 years that I was there, I don't believe there was a single Explorer that got hired on as a police officer down the road. But it's definitely something we can do. But again, it all deals with the staffing that we have available. I mean, we did kind of an offshoot when we did the youth academies. We had the youth academies; those worked out well. You know, I'm not sure if any of those kids have gone on to jobs in law enforcement. I know there were a few that were very interested and wanted to be police officers. I'm just not sure if they've been hired, but it's something that we can look at.
Right. Yeah, because I think, you know, like you said, it's not going to get any easier moving forward in terms of trying to go out and get the outreach to promote the profession. But, you know, like you said, with some positive reinforcements, how about with either the National Guard or the military? Is that any type of a conduit or not really?
A little bit. I mean, we have two right now that are in the military, that are in the Guard, that, you know, they have their training that they go to every other weekend or once a month, and then a couple weeks during the summer. So we have a couple now. So yeah, I mean, those are always good conduits to get people to military. It's funny. I went in when I posted that ad on the National Minority Update. I went in there and looked just to get an idea how many police departments were average. It was unbelievable. Everybody's looking. Everybody. Some departments are putting sign-on bonuses. I found one that had a $7,500 sign-on bonus for certified officers that are certified in other departments. All across the country, everybody's looking. Everybody's trying. From the East Coast all the way, an ad from Seattle, Washington. Everybody's looking. So, well,
all right. No, I appreciate it.
If anybody knows anybody that's interested in, like I said, we start them young. You know, I have a family member that's in his second year of college for criminal justice that wants to be a police officer. And, you know, 4 years ago, I took our background packet, made a copy of it, and gave it to him and said, here, read through this, take a look at it, and all these questions. You don't want to answer any of these questions, yes. Because if you answer yes, chances are you're not going to get hired. So you got to start now. You know, good citizenship, you know, doing the right thing, and you know, starting to build your character. And those are the people that we're looking to hire.
As a thought, maybe too, to go along with what Chris was saying about the Explorer program, if staffing is an issue, I don't know if we could always talk about it offline too, but being able to team up with maybe another department close by, or one of the surrounding towns, so that way it's three focused on a larger pool of potential candidates. And obviously, like somebody in high school getting all the way to their associate's degree is definitely a long game, but at least it's an opportunity to like have somebody who might talk about it to somebody else and kind of get some sort of like momentum going.
No, I think that's a great idea. If you know, maybe, you know, 2 police departments or 3 police departments. We had the mid-state, you know, collaborative. Maybe we get together and, you know, 2 or 3 police departments get together to do a post program. That way, one department's not burdened. You can share the staffing. So right. I like that. I think that's a good idea. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, calls for service. I'll just do a comparison so we have an idea from 2019 to 2020. So for 2019, the department had 845 arrests. And then last year, 2020, we were down to 668. And a lot of that was COVID related. We weren't making a lot of arrests. We didn't want the officers out there, for their protection. A lot of the shoplifting cases, the retail stores didn't want people arrested. They just pretty much wanted them, just criminal trespass from the property. So we didn't want to be bringing people into the PD, exposing our people. It was all just a matter of protection. So the low arrest rate is really, I would say, COVID related. I mean, it's down 177 compared to the previous year. Then in domestics, our domestics were up. 2019, we had 353. And then last year, we had 393. So when you watch the news and people's, the advocates for domestic violence say there's an increase, and we've seen the increase here. So not that it's substantial, but it's still high. It's still high. We've seen an increase. People in crisis, up again, 161 in 2019, up to 195 in 2020. People are stressed from COVID. I've had some discussions with Carol Lebrecht up in Human Services about collaboration and working together. So we've started those initial discussions. We work very good right now. So we're looking to, come up with a better format or a more better team approach to looking at some of these issues. So, but we have seen an increase in those types of calls for service. And I can tell you some of them are the same people. There's a location in town where there's a gentleman that I'd say over the last 3 years, we've been to that apartment 30 times when he's been acting out. So those are the ones you really want to try to get to try to be able to provide them some services. And don't forget, when we get involved, typically there's a risk level there. If somebody's having an issue, in most cases, it can be handled, by another service provider. But when the police get called, there's an escalation there where there's a risk either to themselves or to innocent bystanders. So that's why we get called, or it's because there's some aggressive behavior or a noise complaint, we'll get called. But, by large part, I think a lot of them can be handled by another provider. But, again, if it escalates into something more serious, then we end up getting called and we intervene. Larcenies, there are 597 larcenies in 2019, 685 last year. So that was an increase. And I can tell you our crime statistics are driven by larcenies. And a lot of these are shoplifting because of the retail stores, Walmart, Target, some of the grocery stores, Dick's, sporting goods. So we're seeing a rise in larcenies. And then obviously the car breaks, we had 173 in 2019, and we had 427 last year. I just ran, I just ran some of the numbers today. And if things keep going the way they're going, we're on track to even beat that. It's not slowing down. The car breaks are still there. The stolen cars are a little bit less, but what concerns me now is people are beginning to lock their cars. And we had an attempted carjacking at one of the grocery stores a few weeks ago where dark colored SUV pulled up and tried to yank the woman out of the car. She was quick, threw the car in drive and took off. So they weren't able to get the car. But then we had another case the other day where gentleman saw a kid in the driveway trying to steal the car, came out. I don't think he came out and confronted him, but verbally confronted him from a distance. And to tell you how brazen some of these kids are, the kids basically said, "We like your car and we're coming back to get it." And they took off. So that's the mindset that's there. So we've started go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Counselor Minor had his hand raised, so I don't know if it's.
Go ahead, Chris.
No, go ahead, finish up what you're going. I'll just finish after you.
Okay, so what we started a like a task force between the mid-state towns, Newington, Weathersfield, Rocky Hill, Berlin, and Cromwell. So we're meeting weekly to share intelligence over the car breaks and the stolen cars. And, we're looking at putting some details together. I don't want to get into the specifics of what we're going to do, but, here's my position. If we're going to do the details and we're going to make arrests, then we need to support at the court level. There's no point in arresting people and sending them to court and nothing's going to happen. Because when we do these details, that they cost money, there's overtime. So I want a return on my investment. If I'm putting the resources, the personal resources there, that's funded by taxpayer dollars, and we make arrests and they go to court and nothing's going to happen to them, then what's the point of doing it? I need a return. So hopefully, when we make these arrests, that the court's going to do something with these kids, and whether it's services or whatever. But we had a case where it was a stolen car. The officer did an arrest warrant for 2 kids, had the probable cause, and the warrants were returned, prosecutorial discretion. And they didn't sign the warrant for the stolen cars. And then a week later, one of the kids is caught in a stolen car during a car chase up in the Tolland area of the state. And supposedly, I believe he may have had a gun in the car. And we did the warrant and they chose not to sign it. So my thing is, if we're going to do this, then we need the support of the courts. And if we're not going to have it, what's the point? It's money, it's taxpayer dollars. And I don't want to put details together and arrest kids when nothing's going to happen. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So we'll see where it goes. But, it looks like we may be adding on other towns as we move forward. But, the best thing people can do is that if you see something suspicious, we had an apprehension about a month or so ago where somebody saw some kids breaking in the cars, and instead of going out and confronted them, just called 911, gave us the information. We were able to sneak into the area quietly, and we ended up making 4 arrests. So when you confront people verbally or, in person, number one, you don't want to do that because, some of these kids are armed with firearms. And 2, they're just going to take off and we lose the opportunity of trying to make an apprehension.
Was that the Cherry Hill area one?
It was, yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, it was. Does anybody have any questions?
Just to come back on that. So I know that the 2 instances recently, one that you just referenced with the pursuit with the state police out in the Vernon area. And I believe last week or 2 weeks ago, you had another apprehension by a individual that basically locked some people into a shed that they couldn't get out. And I believe that also was tied to Newington, where that vehicle was stolen out of Newington. Am I correct in that?
You're correct. It was stolen out of town. Yeah.
So I just, with you saying it's a possibility of adding on some other towns, it seems like there seems to be a little bit of a common theme to the east, that a lot of our activities here seem to be going out there as well for some reason or another.
I could tell you it's spread out. We have one, so we process some of the cars and we've been able to get some DNA out of some of the cars. in one of the cars that we got DNA on, it linked to 7 other stolen cars, and it goes from Tolland to Thomaston and every town in between. So that's how wide it is.
So to go back to the prosecutorial discretion that you referenced before,
Mhm.
is the discretion that you're providing them with DNA evidence and they say, oh, sorry, that's not strong enough, or what is their discretion that they're saying it's not enough?
It's their, maybe that individual is on the docket from other cases and are not going to add an additional case to the docket. I couldn't tell you. I just don't know what the thought process.
Because to me, that's ludicrous. If you have enough information and enough, evidence to substantiate your request for a warrant, I just see it being ludicrous that they're saying, nope, sorry, we're not going to do it unless there's a reason for it. And
there's prosecutory discretion. It doesn't come back. No, typically when you draft an arrest warrant, it goes over the court. It gets signed by the prosecutor, it gets signed by the judge, and it comes back. Sometimes they'll sign it. The state's attorney will deny the warrant based on a lack of probable cause, or you'll get the warrant back and they'll say you need additional work, and they'll give you some areas to follow up on. But then you get warrants back that say denied prosecutory discretion. Doesn't mean that you don't have probable cause. It just means that they're not interested in pursuing charges for one reason or another. And we've seen warrants come back with that phrase.
Is that something you're able to follow up on, or is it just like there's so many?
No, it's coming through. Yeah, we don't. To be honest, Todd, we don't question it. If it comes back and they deny it, they deny it, and if it's if it's probable cause, you may, and I'll give you an example. When those 2 warrants came back for those juveniles in the stolen car, I called up the prosecutor, the juvenile prosecutor, and asked him, like, it's pretty clear here that there's more than enough probable cause to make the arrest. And basically was told there was, and if we arrested them, I'm basically going to bring them into court and they're going to be sent home. That was pretty much the response I got. So,
yeah, that's a system problem. I mean, we can't expect to have any difference on the streets if that's going to be the attitude in the courts. And again, that needs to change, but I just don't know how to get to go about making that change. It's just not working.
Yeah, I mean, there's some of it I understand is because they're at a reduced staffing level because of COVID. They just don't have the judges there, the state's attorneys there. They're limited in their staffing, and I get it. And it goes back to when we were getting the car clubs from Springfield that were coming down during the warm weather and basically taking over the Berlin Turnpike with reckless operation. And the directive from us was you go out there and make as many motor vehicle stops as you can, and to send a message that you're not coming into town and taking over the roads and driving recklessly. And one of the kids that got a ticket had mentioned the fact that it was his 3rd or 4th ticket, and all you got to do is send it in not guilty, and they nollie it and nothing happens. So there's only so much that the police can do, and there has to be consequences. It's like raising your kids. Kids need boundaries. Kids need expectations, and when they don't they act out, then there has to be consequences, and there ain't a whole lot of consequences going on out there. Some of these kids, and it's a small group, some of the kids can get whether it's restorative justice practices, alternate interventions that are going to respond well to that. But there's other kids that And we see them at their worst. When they're going to the probation office or going to court, they're at their best. We see them at their worst, and they're pretty cocky, and no letter of apology is going to work for some of these kids. It's just not there. So there has to be consequences, and I don't see a whole lot of consequences right now. And the reason you're seeing all this activity, I believe, in my 35 years of experience, is because there's no consequences. When you got a guy that's been pulled over 4 times, and all he does is keep sending the ticket in, and it gets nollied, then it's not gonna change his driving behavior. The ticket's not worth the paper it's written on. There's no consequences. You gotta have consequences. That keeps people in line, and you know what? It protects all of us. I mean, when you have people that act out, it puts law-abiding citizens, your families, your kids at risk. That kid that's been ticketed 4 times is still going to drive recklessly. And one day you're going to be driving down the street with your toddler strapped into the back seat, and he's going to broadside you, and somebody's going to get seriously injured. And that's what we're trying to prevent. So, the courts and the police have to work together. And I understand there's a lot of alternative programs out there, but I don't know. I just think maybe it's COVID. I just think that you need to regroup and look at things that are working, and you know what, stay with it, and then assess all the other things. If they're not working, then change direction. Because from where I sit right now, there ain't a whole lot working, because the crime isn't going down, it's going up, and it's affecting all of us. And when I hear an official say, well, it's been trending down, and last year it was low, it's just this year it's spiked. Well, that's like saying, you know what, because you didn't have cancer last year and you've been diagnosed with cancer this year, and you didn't have it last year, don't worry about it. You're going to be okay, because last year you didn't have it. The logic just isn't there for me. We got to start looking at it, and we got to start looking at it now, or people are going to pay a serious price. And it's not slowing down. It's just not. It's getting worse. So I don't want to see it. Back in the early 90s, 92, 93, the crime rates were at its highest. I don't want to see it return to that. But it just seems like we're trending in the wrong direction, and I think it's time to regroup and figure out what's working, and stick to it, and what's not working, and make those changes. Because if we don't, things are going to continue down a dangerous path. That's just my personal opinion.
Question, as the community end of this, what are things, usually when I hear these numbers, I guess I never thought, like, what are things that we could be doing to help with the uptick in domestics, or the uptick in distressed people? Not sure I can help with the people speeding down the Berlin Turnpike or anything like that, but
yeah, I mean, again, I got to get on my soapbox. The mental health system is broken. People aren't getting the services that they need. I mean, you think back, look at the old Cedar Crest Hospital, when you had the hospital, and people were there, and they were, getting treatment 24/7. And they didn't want people institutionalized. And I get it. I understand that. And it was close all these hospitals, but they put these folks back into the community, and they're not getting anywhere close to the services that, they should be getting. And when you don't get those services, then people act out, and, the police get involved. So it's going to take a lot of money, and a lot of time, and a lot of effort. But these folks that are acting out in crisis, there's a reason for it. They're just not getting the services They're not taking their medication. You can't force them to take their medication. When somebody gets the services that they need and getting it on a frequent basis, they have a better chance of, not having a crisis. But like I said, we have one individual, we've been there, 30 times in the last few years, and it's the same thing over and over again. We had another gentleman in town that we were there 3 times over the course of 3 weeks. Same complaint, taken to the hospital, released, back home, and then several days later, another 911 phone call, same issue. And again, taken to the hospital and released. It's just, it's frustrating. So it all boils down to, related services, people getting those services. It's just, they're just not there. Domestics, I think over the course of time, we've done a lot of great work with domestics. You have the Coalition of Domestic Violence in Connecticut, the lethality assessment, all good things. Domestic violence is, it's up because of COVID, but over the course of my career, a lot of really good positive changes that made a huge difference in domestic violence. And the lethality assessment being one of them. We do them. You do that survey to see if people are at risk, and then if they are, then there's a handoff to a social worker or an advocate. Really good stuff. That's made a big difference. But when you look around the state and you still see some of the things that are going on, it just tells you there's a lot more work to be done. But I think over my career, a lot of really good changes in domestic violence that have made a big difference, either, up at the Capitol with certain legislation and the Connecticut Coalition of Domestic Violence, all really good that have made a big difference.
So what was the name of the survey that
It's a lethality assessment. So it's a questionnaire to see if there's a heightened risk. And the officers go through the questionnaire with the victim. And then if they screen in, is what we call it, then they call and they hand off to a social worker and then if they need to be into a, a shelter, they're able to get into a shelter. What else? Pistol permits, I'll touch on that. We're seeing a huge rise in that. Robberies, we had 16 in 2019. We only had 9 last year, so there was a reduction there. Sexual assaults, we had 19 in 2019, 22 last year. Stolen motor vehicles, 53 in 2019 and 92 in last year. And then traffic stops were down almost 50%, and a lot of that was COVID. We didn't want the officers interacting with people just for their own protection. So we've revamped it. The officers are back out there performing that function, and we're seeing an increase now. But during the height of COVID, we didn't want officers making a stop. We just didn't want that interaction. We wanted them to be visible, but we just didn't want them stopping people. Any questions? Okay, I'll go over the budget. So just to give you a quick overview of the budget process. So we start our budget in November and December. So I actually, with my administrative assistant, start working on the budget in November. And then the budget is due the first week in January to the town manager. So it goes to the town manager. And then I meet with the town manager, we review it. And then he makes his revisions and he presents it before the town council. And I know Chris is here. And I think my budget goes before the council, I think in the next couple of weeks or so. And then the council can make adjustments to the budget. So the police department total budget is roughly $7.9 million. And that's to staff 68 positions, 52 of which are sworn positions. Those are police officer positions, 8 dispatchers, and then a civilian staff of 8. So patrol being the largest part of the budget is $4.2 million. The detective division, a little over $1 million. Support services, that's $847,000. And then the traffic division this year, the traffic maintainer used to be budgeted and managed by the highway department. That person is now being transferred over here to the police department. So I've taken on those budget responsibilities and the supervision and management of the traffic maintainer. And basically what the traffic maintainer does, he does all the line painting, you know, the crosswalks at the schools, the signage. We use them for closing roads during major accidents or hazards. So he's been moved from the highway department over here to the police department. And within that budget, I don't know if anybody knows this, but we also fund the crossing guards for the Board of Education. So all the crossing guards that you see throughout town that cross the students to and from school, that's all funded out of my budget. We do that. It's not a Board of Ed function. It's a police department function. And then public safety communications, you know, that's, you know, we dispatch police, fire, EMS. That's all out of our budget. And then police training, it's $226,000. That's for our training. You know, that's research training every 3 years. So a third of the department gets retrained every 3 years for certification. EMR training, you know, to keep their certification for medical calls. All the other certs for, you know, use of force instructors and equipment. And then additional training that we'll send our officers to DUI enforcement, you know, interview and interrogation school, you know, de-escalation. We do train the trainers. We use that money to train trainers. So that funds all that. So that's it in a nutshell. You know, 81% of the budget is in salaries. So you can see, you know, a large percentage. So it's interesting when I sit on chief's process as an assessor and we ask chiefs or potential chiefs, you know, you just been given a directive by your town manager or town administrator that, you know, you got to cut 10% from your budget. You'll get an idea of those applicants that have actually done police budgets, because the ones that don't, they'll try to nickel and dime it. The only way you can get a cut like that is to cut personnel, because 81% of your budget is personnel. So when you have to make a significant cut, you're going to lose people. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I do. So are we looking at a cut, you think, or?
No, I'm not. My budget, I've had some discussions with the town manager, and if there are some cuts,
is he your boss? Is that the way it works? He's your boss or something like that, right?
Yeah, I report to the town manager.
Right.
So there's some discussions about making some reductions, and I can assure you that none of the reductions are significant, nor are they will affect service. I mean, that's the bottom line.
Was there an increase because of the police accountability bill that we have to account for that would put any danger? Yeah, so there's money in there for drug testing and psychological screenings that are mandated by the police accountability bill. The big expense that's going to come from the police accountability bill is the body cameras. Yeah.
And we're going to have to start. We've had in-car cameras. The latest version of our in-car cameras we've had since 2015. So in another couple of years, we're going to have to look at changing those out and getting new ones. So the body cameras and the in-car cameras, it's probably going to be about $500,000 after everything's all said and done. And that's over the course of a few years. So that's money that is not in my budget. That's going to have to be found. So the state is offering a 30% reimbursement, 50% if you're a distressed municipality. We're not a distressed municipality. So we'll get a 30% offset from the body cams. Not a large amount, but we're going to need, our plan is to get everybody. Did everybody, I sent that overview. It was a watered down version. So everybody's going to get a body cam. When we have the extravaganza, I mean, we have like 30 officers working between the extravaganza and patrol. So and then we had the Black Lives Matter protest, everybody worked. So, you know, everybody would need a body camera. If you get 25 body cameras, who do you give a camera to, and who doesn't get a camera? And by law, you have to have a camera. Every police officer performing a law enforcement function has to have a body camera. So we need to get everybody a body camera. Plus, you're going to need some spares. So we're looking at about 55. And then we have 12 in-car cameras now in the patrol cars. We're probably going to have to get 18. So we're going to need another 6 additional in-car cameras when we change out the cameras that are there now. And all this has to be done by July of 2022. So we're in the process now of working with our vendor. We have WatchGuard in-car cameras, and we're looking at going to the WatchGuard body cams because it works in concert with the in-car cameras.
Hey, Chief,
Yes.
real quick, what are the effects going to be for you in terms of data storage of all these body cameras you're going to have? What are the rules? Are we hosting that storage ourselves? Is there been any discussion on a state or regional level in terms of hosting the large volume that's now going to be?
Yeah, we're either going to host it locally, that's up to IT, or go on a cloud. If you go on a cloud, it's 38 grand a year to go on their cloud. And then I think it's like 18 if we host it here. But yeah, you're going to see a lot more digital media because of that. So plus we're going to need another person to manage it because we're going to see an increase in requests for video.
Yep. Okay, so you are going to eventually have to add a body to that position down the road, correct?
Yeah, or reassign somebody to do it, but we're definitely going to need somebody. We're down a sergeant in support services right now, and the one sergeant that's in there now is getting overwhelmed with everything he has to do, and there's no way we could pile this on him. He's not going to be able to do it. He just can't do it. So
now is of saving specific slivers that are needed, or are there counsel or requests being made by attorneys for information? I mean, how does that go? If I want to request information on a specific incident, how quickly do you have to produce that data?
Well, it's an FOI request, so it would fall under the rules for FOI. So we would have to make a concerted effort to get that out there. We have to respond to you right away to let you know, yeah, we've received your request. And then we have to process it and provide that information to you. Okay.
And how frequently do you overwrite your data?
Well, it overwrites every 30 days unless we flag it. We'll flag it if it's evidence, or if it's, a use of force case, we'll flag it. So we're constantly flagging, video if we think there's a potential down the road of there being a problem.
Okay, so as far as the FOI request goes, let's say there's an incident today with a body camera and I choose not to engage in an FOI request for 2-3 months for whatever reason, can that data be overwritten just because you didn't think it needed to be flagged? Or I'm just thinking
Yeah,
of potential.
Yeah, if it's overwritten, it's gone unless we save it. Well, I think the
So there's
body cameras might be, I think it might be 90 days. I'm not sure. I got to double check. But the in-cars
All
are
right.
30 days.
Because I just could see headaches coming with this, with people coming in with late requests that are going to be
Yeah.
beyond where you're saving the data. All right, thank you.
So there's no statutory obligation to keep it for a certain amount of time?
Yeah, there is. There is a
Okay.
statutory obligation. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. It's the same like video recordings, all the phone calls get tape recorded coming into dispatch. It's 30
Yeah.
days. So,
Oh, okay.
so there's a time period that you have to retain it. And then after that, it just
Yeah, we do the
it
same.
erases. Yeah. Yeah. So, but that's all, there's going to be a host of, there's a lot of video. And when you make an arrest, the first thing the defense attorney wants to know is there any video? Is there in-car camera video or is there body cam video? That's the first thing they ask. And then if there is, then we have to make copies and provide that. So same thing with the media. I mean, do you have any video footage? Yes, we do. Then we have to provide it. So, but there's certain things with the body camera that we're going to have for, redact. We need redacting software, victims of crime, sexual assault, domestic violence. Obviously, you can't have their face on the video because you can't, they're protected. So you have to have redaction software to protect their identity. That's all. That all costs money. So, I can tell you, there's not a lot of rumblings. I mean, the video gets us out of trouble more than it gets us into trouble. If I'm a police officer, I'd want a body cam. Everybody's filming you anyways. You might as well have it from your perspective, and it's not being basically constructed in a way, where they chop off things. You're seeing it's in entirety from your perspective, not just smidgens of little pieces. So I don't see any resistance. I think everybody knows they're being recorded. Pretty much when you walk out the door here, every call you go on, every person that you see, everything you do, you got to know you're being recorded one way or another. So.
No, Chief, we've got audio. Officers wear audio, correct?
Yeah, so the in-car cameras, you have the video, but if they walk into a house, they'll actually record the audio. You won't get the video because the car camera is only going in a certain direction, but they'll capture the audio.
Okay, does that automatically occur when the lights go on, or does the officer
Yeah,
have
as soon as the officers hit the lights on, it automatically activates.
Okay. So in the event going into a house like you described, do they have to manually turn it on, or does it automatically?
If it's an active call and they responded lights and siren, it's already on.
It's already on. It stays on.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you'll have officers that they'll be involved in something and it starts getting a little messy. They'll activate the recorder just to protect themselves.
Gotcha.
If somebody tries to claim something down the road.
All right. So they're essentially wearing these anyways. It's really not much of a difference outside if they're going to see as well as hear, right? Or is there different?
Well, yeah, the big difference is you're not getting the video. You're getting the audio, but you're not getting the video when they leave the car. The body cams capture the video.
Gotcha.
Counselor Bedrejko has her hand up.
Yep. There you go. She's on mute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can.
Can you hear me?
I can, Gail. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. I was reading in the paper that Well, I'm just wondering, how prepared are we for the July 1st, those parts of the police accountability bill that go in? Because I understand some police forces are worried about the retraining for the restraint holding. And they said that their forces, it wasn't possible to retrain everybody by the July 1st date. I mean, how do you feel?
Yeah, it's impossible. It's impossible. I don't know if it's July 1st or April. Yeah, it's impossible. Post
I
hasn't
think it's
even,
April 1st, isn't it?
yeah, it's April 1st. And Post hasn't even come out with the use of force policy yet. It's not even drafted. So you have Post, who said they were going to come out, the legislator was going to have Post write the policy. The Police Officer Standard Training Council has yet to issue the policy. So we have no policy. We have no curriculum for training. We have no trainers. So there's nothing in place to get officers up to speed on the policy or the changes, and the changes are big, to get them ready for that April 1st date. So you're basically throwing them out there to fail to their own devices. So
does that open us up for liability, or is it just because, or is it open up Post for liability, or what does it do?
I can tell you who's going to get it. It's the town's going to get it. The town's going to take the burden. So the Chiefs of Police Association is asking for an extension. So I believe it's till October.
October, right?
Or maybe either October or the following April. So the policy can get drafted, so it can come in and the officers can get trained on the policy. The officers can get trained in a new curriculum and come back and train the officers on the new standards. Don't forget, we've been operating 30 years under the same standards, 30 years. And all those standards were created by the US Supreme Court, another case law. So those standards have been in place for 30 years, and now they've changed them. And you got to provide office with the opportunity to train in those new changes. And if you don't, they're failing. They're just going to fail. And somebody's going to get seriously hurt, whether it's an officer or an innocent bystander. I mean, think about yourself at work. I mean, whatever it is that you do, and you know what, we're making these significant changes, and you have no policy, no guide for those changes, and you've received no training, and 3 weeks later, now you gotta work under those new changes. How are you gonna do it? How you expect an officer to do it? It's just not gonna happen.
What are the chances of it getting delayed?
I have no idea. It's turned into a political.
Okay.
They haven't even, the Attorney General or Inspector General, I think is the title. And Paul, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because you're up at the Capitol. They haven't even named an Inspector General yet to head up the agency that's going to investigate police wrongdoing. That was supposed to be in place, and that's not even done.
I think they started discussing this for the extension on Monday, and then session started, and so they had to stop the committee meeting on it. So I don't know what they did, if they're going to continue it or what their thing was, but they were openly discussing the extension, and then I think we had Senate session on Monday, so they stopped.
Yeah,
So
I watched
there
it.
are
They
ongoing
stopped it.
discussions.
Right, they stopped it, but the Inspector General is supposed to be completed. That hasn't even been done. They were down to 2 candidates, and they couldn't agree on who to make, so they stalled that. If they don't allow for that extension, how are these? I don't even know what to tell my officers.
Right.
You have no policy and you have no training. Now go out there and do what you're supposed to do. Well, how am I supposed to do it when I'm confronted with a deadly use of force situation? And one of the things that they didn't put into the legislation is they put deadly weapon, but they left out deadly instrument or dangerous instrument. That wasn't even written there, that they have to add that.
Oh, that's right. Like, I think they were saying something about being attacked like with a baseball bat or
Right,
or
that's
tiger iron or
not a
something.
deadly weapon. That's classified as a dangerous instrument.
Yeah, I
Right.
think that's where the hang up started with dangerous in the wording. It was like, they said it was like a 6-word amendment that they got stuck on. And I think it was
Yeah.
where they said, or a dangerous instrument. And they were concerned about if someone pulled out a cell phone and an officer thought it was a gun or something to that effect. That's where it started.
That's a whole different thing. That's a whole different
Yeah.
thing. So if I'm a police officer and I pull up to a fight and I'm watching somebody get beaten in the head with a baseball bat, that's not a deadly, that's a dangerous instrument. It's an instrument that's being used in a way to cause serious injury or death. So I need to take immediate action to stop that assault, or that person's going to die. And if it's not in the statute, then how do you, there's just so much confusion right now, and confusion creates indecisiveness. And I'm here to tell you, if they don't fix this, somebody's going to get seriously hurt or killed. It's going to happen. It's just a question of time. Politics need to be put aside, and things need to be get done and get this straightened out, where we can get the policy and we can get the training, so we can put these people, our folks out there, to do the job and do it the right way. And if that doesn't get done, somebody's going to get seriously injured or killed. It's just a matter of time. I'll be honest with you, I don't even know what to tell my people right now. I just don't. I'm praying that they give the extension so we can provide that guidance and that training. But without that guidance and training, they're going to fail. They're going to fail, and somebody's going to die. Period. I'll get off my soapbox. I've been doing this job for 35 years. You know what? I've seen a lot of really good changes in the profession, and I've seen a lot of disastrous ones. And this is a disastrous one. Trust me when I tell you that. As a chief, I'm not trying to say, don't do this. I understand I understand the changes and where they came from and why. All I'm asking for is give us the opportunity to train our people and give them the guidance they need to succeed. Because if they don't, then something tragic's going to happen, and we don't want that. And so I'm not saying, we don't want this statute. The statute is there. I understand that. But, when you change the rules, you got to give people an opportunity to adapt to that. And, 3 weeks from now, or 4 weeks, when that law changes and it goes into effect, what are we going to do? I don't have an answer. I have no answer for my people. Just go out there and figure it out. It's a tragedy in the making if this doesn't get resolved.
Chief, I'm presuming that the association is all over the legislature and the Senate at this point, that they realize that you can't put these people in this position.
Yeah, they've reached out. It's just a question whether or not they're going to listen. And, there's politics going on both sides. I'm not a politician. My allegiance is to Newington, and I advocate for our residents and what I think is best for their safety and protection. And not only that, that includes our police officers. And when I watch the politics go on, it's frustrating. It's frustrating. The solution is there. It's there. The solution is there for this statute. The solution is there for policing. The solution is there for equity. It's it's all there. You just got to set politics aside and do the right thing for the right reasons, and we'll solve some of the problems that we're dealing with. But unfortunately, when politics come into play, things get askew, and the political system is broken. Until we fix that, we're just going to keep spinning our wheels. And I'm kind of getting off the subject, but it's about keeping people safe. And when I see that, I get frustrated and I get a little passionate. I'll leave it at that.
It's the reality of it.
Yeah.
It comes out.
Yeah.
This is real. These are real decisions that are going to have to be made in a very short period of time, or people's lives are going to be affected. All right. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, we'll go to the pistol permit process. So we've seen a huge spike in pistol permit applications. So in 2019, we had 131. Last year, we had 206. And we are, a little over 3 months into 2021, and we're already up to 111. So everybody's getting a pistol permit. Everybody's getting a gun. And, I think people are anxious of what's going on out there for a number of reasons. Their personal safety, the political unrest. I think there's a lot of factors that are coming into play for people wanting to get a pistol permit. And I can see that a lot of them too are women, a lot of women getting pistol permits. So just to give you a brief synopsis of the process, you got to be over 21. You apply here at the police department, and you fill out a state form. It comes to us. We do a background check on you. We check your criminal history, in-house computers, to see if there's anything that may make you unsuitable to have a pistol permit. Arrest record, things of that nature. And just talk a little bit about arrest records, because you may have an applicant that's been arrested 5 times for various criminal violations, and each one of those arrests have been nollied. So if they've been nollied after 13 months, they get expunged and they don't exist. And you can't use that for the basis of denying somebody a pistol permit. So if they've been arrested and the case gets nollied, doesn't get adjudicated at court, they just nolly it, then, after 13 months, in the eyes of the law, that arrest doesn't exist, and you can't hold that arrest against the applicant. I can tell you that there are pistol permits I sign off on that I'm very reluctant to sign off on, but I know if I go before the Firearms Review Board, I'm going to lose. When I deny somebody a permit, there's due process. They can go before the Firearms Review Board and testify before the board on why they should get their permit and why I shouldn't have denied them their permit. And, if the board agrees with them, they get the permit. It's a long process. I can tell you right now, we have 1 officer and 1 records clerk. All they do is pistol permits, nothing else. All they do. I'm looking at my conference table. I have a stack of pistol permits that I have to go through and review and sign off on or deny, and it's this high. It's unbelievable, the amount of pistol permits that we're getting, and it just tells me one thing, that people are nervous, they're anxious, and there's a lot going on. There's a lot in the process. It is a huge responsibility when you carry a firearm. And so I issue the temporary permit. It used to be good for 60 days. Now it's good for 150 days because of COVID. Then you go down to the state and you get your state permit after I issue your temporary permit. And the state isn't able to accommodate those applicants during the 150-day period. So there's times where it's beyond that, Then they got to come back here. We got to recheck their background, and then I got to issue another temporary permit. So that person is basically, it's redundant. We're doing twice the work because the state's not able to accommodate them within that 150-day period.
Is there
They-
additional cost to us for all that or no?
No.
No, okay.
We
Good.
charge $70 for a fee, for the criminal history check to check, the state system, the FBI. We do an in-house computer check. We look at their previous addresses, and then we contact those other police departments, because just because there's not a criminal arrest doesn't mean, the person is suitable. There may be other things, other police contacts, attempted suicides that will, make them unsuitable for a permit. So those types of things aren't going to show up in a criminal history. So those are only going to come up during an in-house computer check. So we do that. So, but one of the
Can you
concerns.
see
Go ahead, Ash.
if there's, like you were saying, they could have been arrested, but then if it's past a certain time frame, it doesn't count. Can you see anything but you just can't act on it?
Right, correct. In some cases, I can actually see the charge of assault third, and it says nollie. I can't use it. So I know they've been arrested for assaulting somebody. So, I would be reluctant to issue that person, but because they weren't convicted and it was nollied, it's like it didn't even exist. And that goes back to, you have say you have a homicide, a domestic violence related homicide. And, the news media says that one of the first questions they're always going to ask you, have the police ever been there before? And you have, and you've gone there before, and you've arrested, the husband on 2 occasions. In each one of those occasions, that the charges were nollie. So technically, you can't say you were there and they were arrested because the case technically doesn't exist. But then when you come out publicly and say, we have no record of being there, and the neighbors have watched the police be there on 2 occasions where they've watched the husband taken out in handcuffs, and they hear the police saying, no, we haven't been there, we have no record. What do you think the neighbors are saying? The cops are lying. They were there. We saw them. We saw them take them out with handcuffs. And they're saying that there's no record of them being there. They're lying. We're not lying. We just can't provide that information because it's been nollied. And then, there's a push for, a clean slate, automatic, after a certain period of time, your criminal record gets expunged. Well, as a convicted felon, you're prohibited from possessing firearms or having a pistol permit. So if they do the clean slate after a period of time at the strike of midnight, when you were once prohibited from having a firearm or a permit, now you automatically become eligible for a pistol permit. And I had a conversation with one of our elected officials and brought that issue to him. And he said, well, they're considering not doing felonies, just misdemeanors. Well, then I replied, well, here's a list of misdemeanors if you're convicted of that prohibit you from having a pistol permit. So there's like 10 or 12 convictions for a misdemeanor that prohibit you from having a firearm or pistol permit. So these are all things that need to be thought about before they move forward on any of these changes. But, it's, they're a lot of work. Like I said, I go through them with a fine tooth comb before I put my name on it. I want to make sure that, that person is responsible and, is the right person to carry a firearm. But again, there are some where I'm reluctant, but I know if I deny it, I'm going to go before the board and I'm going to lose. I'm not going to win. If I've had some that I've been over there and I can tell you, every time I've gone there, I've won. I haven't lost a case over there yet. But again, at some point it's going to happen. But I've had some, arrests that were pretty significant arrests that were nollied, and I didn't want to give the permit, but I know you can't use it. You just can't use it because technically it doesn't exist. Unless you can get somebody that, a police officer that remembers the case. You can't introduce the report, you can't introduce the arrest, but you can introduce the officer's memory. You can erase the public records, but you can't erase the officer's memory. So if it's recent enough, even though it was nollied, if I can find the officer that was involved, and from his recollection, I can use him as a material witness to testify, I can do that. But, officers are busy, they're involved in a lot of cases. And I can't say under the QT, hey, take a look at this report and refresh your memory. I want to use you as a witness before the Firearms Review Board. I can't do that. I can't, because the report doesn't exist. It has to be from his memory only. In the cases I wanted to try to introduce testimony from the officers, they just didn't remember the case, or they remembered very little about it because it was so dated, so I couldn't use it. So, but huge spike in pistol permits. Anybody, any questions on the process? No. Okay, now we go to public comment. Gail, Chris, you got anything more, or anybody else?
Nope, I'm all set, thanks.
Heather, you got anybody in the wings?
No one just put their hand up. Esmaz.
What is it?
Esmaz. S as
Okay.
in Sam. M-A-Z-Z. Put up
Okay.
their
Oh,
hand.
it's Sue Mazzacoli. Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
Hi,
It's Sue.
hi, Chief. Sue Mazzacoli,
Hey,
149.
Sue.
Okay, I'm not sure if I say my address, so I'll just say 149 Harris Drive, Newington, Connecticut. You mentioned when you were talking about, you need more police officers, you need more younger people interested in going into law enforcement. And you also happen to mention a document that you gave a relative who might be interested with the questions on it that might be pertinent, whether they should go into that profession. I have a grandson who's a junior at Glastonbury High. Proud to say he's an honor student, doing very well with a lot of activities at the school, sports, etc. And I was just wondering, is that something that you might share so that?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You know what, Sue, just send me an email. I'll make a copy for you. And it basically is personal history statement. It's all the questions that we asked the applicants. But yeah, I'd be happy to provide that. Absolutely.
Thank you very much. How do I shut this off?
I just muted her. I think that's it.
That's it. Okay. Anybody have any comments? Members?
I was just going to ask if there was any follow-up to the headlight clinic.
Yeah, you know what? I saw Jamie. We've had some, Todd. Good question. I don't have an exact number for you, but I know we've had some. And it's funny. I was driving home a couple weeks ago, and I didn't have my uniform on, and there was a car behind me with only one headlight, and I was afraid to stop it, being in street clothes. And I just didn't want, especially if I didn't want to make anybody nervous, especially if it was a woman. I had an opportunity, but I missed it. But I know
probably me, because I just
Maybe
put
it
my
was.
headlight the other night, and I was driving down the turnpike, and I'm going to AutoZone to get my light, and I'm like, I swear to God, I'm gonna run into one Newington PD and they're gonna pull me over and give me
Yeah.
give me a certificate to get a new light.
But you can afford it. But because it's, we'll keep it going until the money's used up. That was all donation money. So, we'll keep it until the money's used up. If we have extra money, maybe we can do something at National Night Out or something. People need a headlight fixed or something along those lines. I had a woman call me the other day. They actually live in Newington, but her son belongs to a Boy Scout troop in Hartford. And he wants to do his Citizens Merit Badge. So I suggested that, he could work with us and any other members of his troop that are working on the same merit badge for National Night Out. So, hopefully by then, I'm confident. I don't know if anybody's been by the police department at Town Hall. It's starting to come along. We haven't moved back into dispatch yet, but judging by how I think the layout is going to be, because you can kind of see it taking shape, doing National Night Out again out here in the parking lot, I think is going to be awesome. I really do. There'll be more room. It won't be as crammed. As crammed as it was the last time. It was great. It was awesome. So I think we'll be able to do it as good, even better and bigger than we did it the last time. And I think people are going to be excited in a sense where, everybody's been cooped up and now they're able to get out and, have a good time. So I think there's a lot of enthusiasm here at the PD and in town. So. Anybody have anything else? Good. Okay. Obviously you guys have my phone number, my email. If anything comes up, any ideas that you think of that's important to help, what we had talked about last night, feel free to give me a phone call, send me an email, and I'll certainly get the information to you. Anything, always open for ideas, suggestions, and I'll keep you updated on National Night Out as we move forward, the golf tournament, anything else that comes up. Hopefully within the next couple months, things open up a little bit, with people getting their vaccines, and hopefully, not like I talked about, not that we'll ever get back to normal, but we'll be able to do some of the things we once did together as a town. So, okay. All right, guys, I'll see you next time. Like I said, feel free to reach out at any time.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
Great. Thank you.
Bye,
Bye,
guys.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Here.